with 46% of Americans right now self-identifying as independents, is that
Yeah.
because they are truly completely independently minded and they don't want to belong to anything with any sort of label? Or is it that no one's invited them to a home that is inclusive and makes them feel good, right? Like, what if we built that home for them? What if we built a place that was solutions oriented, that focused on compromise and getting shit done? What a notion. And I felt that need so desperately, Andrew, the need for a sense of community, broader sense of community amongst Americans. So when I saw what y'all were doing last summer, I thought, huh, I think that's the other piece of the puzzle.
It is my pleasure and thrill to welcome to the podcast the newly named CEO of the Forward Party, Lindsey Drath. Lindsey, welcome.
Hey, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's been a lot of fun working with you and getting to know you these past weeks and months. And you're new to most people listening to this. So for most people listening to this, it'd be like, Forward Party has a new CEO. So you and I got to know each other while you were a senior executive at this awesome organization, Unite America, which,
Yes.
I mean, the name kind of says it all, but what the heck is Unite America and what were you doing there?
So Unite America it's an organization that actually functions as a pooled fund to raise money and then invest in structural reform campaigns across the country, and also to support candidates. So that's pretty explicitly what it does. But in a broader sense, Unite America sits in this big space that people talk about, Andrew, as democracy. And I think oftentimes, especially because of some of the challenges in the last two election cycles, folks find that the notion of democracy, people think, is synonymous with voting rights. And the voting rights space is critically important, but also relatively well funded. There's a lot of leadership in the voting rights space. It's an area that's been in existence longer than the structural reform space, and certainly longer than the third party. So when we look at the work that the team at Unite America did to invest in a series of ballot reform measures around the country, it was pretty significant, because it's a relatively nascent and new and underfunded space.
Yeah, so when you say structural reform, what I think is nonpartisan primaries, ranked choice voting, which will be familiar to people who are into to Forward. And those ballot initiatives or campaigns require resources. And Unite America is probably the biggest source of funds for those initiatives. And you were,
It is.
and you were front and center in trying to get those resources in the door.
Yeah, we raised in 2019 when I joined the team over there. They had set forth a pretty ambitious goal of raising and deploying $100 million into the structural reform space. And we actually surpassed that goal through the 2022 election. And we were able to do that because of extraordinary philanthropists and supporters around the country who are willing to make the investment, but also because of really worthy campaigns that showed us a pathway to victory. That not only would we have a pathway towards winning, but that win would result in something that was really transformational. And Alaska is a great example of that. So we were early and consistent investors in the top 4 primary system in Alaska, which was the combination of a nonpartisan primary and then a ranked choice voting general election. And we saw at the end of 2022 the results of that transformative reform in the reelection of Lisa Murkowski, and then the election of the first ever, Indigenous person, Native Alaskan to Congress, beating Sarah Palin. So really, really exciting stuff there.
Mary Peltola, love Mary.
Mary's awesome.
Yeah, so for those of you who wonder how the heck any of that came about, Lindsey and Unite America were working on that ballot initiative before it was cool back in 2020.
We're cool now. We're so hip and relevant, Andrew.
And then also in Nevada, Unite America was behind a lot of the resources there. And the Nevada ballot initiative, people, if you dig into it, I think the total deployment was about $17 million. Lindsey was instrumental in growing that space, really. From what do you think it was when you got there in 2019?
Um, Gosh, I'd say I think we were maybe like 7 million. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of growth. So what the heck kind of case did you make to people when you were like, "Hey guys, you're investing money in the wrong things. You should invest it over here."
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, 2020 presented a really exciting opportunity for the reform space. Our friends Catherine Gale and Michael Porter had released a book called The Politics Industry, where they
Love it.
started to kind of
Yeah.
socialize the notion of Final Five voting, understanding the difference between open primaries and a singular nonpartisan primary. Um, our friend Rob Ritchie over at Fair Vote has been doing
Love
this
him.
work for 30 years. He just
Yeah.
celebrated his 30th anniversary over
Talk
there.
about doing it before it was cool.
Man, and I think sadly for our nation, Andrew, but fortunately for this movement, I think things were just so broken. Things were so very broken that by the time the 2020 election was ramping up, you had folks really looking at these reforms as an opportunity to address a system that just was not representative for the voters and was not holding elected officials accountable, and wasn't inspiring them to do their best work, right, as elected officials. So you had this need, so you had a desperate need in the marketplace, and then you had a solution, and you had folks like Rob and Catherine who had been doing this work, so that there was a little bit of seeding there. So you had Massachusetts. There was a ranked choice voting initiative, unfortunately that failed in Massachusetts, but was endorsed by the Boston Globe. You had the ranked choice voting. I think you're a little familiar with the ranked choice voting in the Democratic primary in New York, Andrew.
Yep.
So that had passed, and you've got guys like there's a guy named Stan Lockhart in Utah who has passed dozens of municipal initiatives adopting ranked choice voting in Utah. So you started to see these different opportunities really clicking across the country. At the same time, you saw a lot of people wanting to try and invest in something that was sticky, solutions oriented, and made a difference. And I think that these suite of reforms, it is a suite. Not every state or town
Sure.
is going to respond in the same way. We're not a silver bullet. United America wasn't a silver bullet organization. Neither is the Forward Party. And so I think that combination of need, resonance, and funding all kind of came together. The United America ended up doing 30. They spent $33 million between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, it's great stuff and great growth that you were an enormous part of. So, what then drew
Yeah, and
you
shout
into?
out to their executive director, Nick Troiano, who just
Yeah,
also
love Nick.
he's just a monster. He works so hard with his heart in the right place. So that's you have leadership too in the movement. I mean, leadership, with people like you and with Nick who get in there and do the work every day is really critical.
Yeah, and Nick's tremendous. So, what drew you over to this side of the movement? Because Forward Party, I'm super excited about the progress we've made, but it is a different approach, and I think in some ways, I think the reform cause that you were championing, and love Unite America, love the work they're doing. It's like a slightly different approach, I'd say, than what Forward Party is doing. I'll speak for myself for a moment. I think that America is getting polarized and torn apart by these two warring tribes that, and like many Americans look at and don't even recognize, even if they might even technically be a part of one or the other. I mean,
Hey,
that's
preaching to the choir, Andrew.
yeah, and so I thought, okay, we need to turn down the tribalism, turn down the polarization, or else it's going to wind up with literal catastrophe. And so I saw this group of reforms as mission critical, but I also thought that you needed to raise a popular movement that Americans could
Hmm.
join and see themselves in, that stood for values of being agreeable, like knowing that you're not going to agree on everything under the sun in terms of issue position, that we're all Americans. We can sit down and hammer out solutions where we're all a little bit sad at the end, but that's actually vastly superior to me just posturing and turning people, like on or off emotionally in a way that ends up dehumanizing people. I mean, now half of Democrats view Republicans as corrupt and a threat to the country, and half of Republicans feel the same way about Democrats. I mean, that's not an environment where anyone's going to be able to get anything done. And so I thought it was necessary to change the dynamic and create a new, unifying, positive, popular movement that could help bring people together and also make the case for these reforms. So that was my approach to all of this. But you have like a really distinct journey. So like what was your progression or line of thinking?
Yeah, I do have a distinct journey, although, I mean, so many of us, I love hearing from our state leads around the country what their light bulb moment was, that moment that brought them here, what's inspired them to be evangelists on behalf of this mission. It really, everybody comes to this space on their own journey. For me, I had the opportunity, as I said, to start to work with Unite America in 2019. My background was in Republican Party politics, Andrew. So I worked for John Boehner, I worked for the Romney campaign. You and I were chatting about our mutual friend, Michael Steele. That was actually my first on the ground full time campaign that I did when he ran for the United States Senate. After 2016, it just never felt like the party that I had been a part of for so many years. For many people in this space, the anti-Trump factor is part of their journey. It actually wasn't for me because I always saw Donald Trump as a symptom of something deeply systemic in our nation. It wasn't him. It was the fact that people were drawn to him and understanding what is happening right now in our nation. That someone whose vitriol is resonating to a place where the language and the tone that he espoused that folks would never allow for in their own homes, right? Or amongst their friends or their colleagues or in front of their children, they were creating allowances for
He
the
normalized a
president.
lot of very, very
He
terrible
normalized it, and it
behavior.
was really bizarre. And so I didn't look at it as him. I looked at it as a bigger systemic issue. And so what I found is, in my work in Republican Party politics, I found some really good people that I really thought were drawn to elected office and to service with a servant mindset, who all of a sudden were running as close to Donald Trump as they could, and it just
Whoa,
it was
that's
bizarre. Yeah, it was like,
that is bizarre.
it was like pod people, like zombie apocalypse, like they'd been bitten or something, right? They couldn't help themselves. So I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to start working with Unite America, and shared with the people that I worked with there that I finally found a home. I felt like I had been politically homeless and found a home. Still registered Republican. That was my option, right? But I felt like I was helping to advocate for the adoption of these really transformative reforms that would release people from that two-party grip. At least the elected officials who maybe had a comma R or a comma D didn't have to caucus with them, and they would be free to work across the aisle. All things that are true. All things that are true. It is plumbing. Plumbing is important. Anybody who's a homeowner or who has water issues knows how important plumbing is. So plumbing is important. But plumbing isn't what, brings people together with families over the holidays around a shared table, right? Like a home is more than plumbing. It's a place of gathering, and it's a place of belonging, and it's a place of community. And what I realized in the adoption of these reforms, or rather, I would say for the campaigning for these reforms, that there weren't enough people around, and we had really, really well-intentioned, very smart people, right? Like the democracy reform space, and the adoption of structural reforms, in the whole suite, right? Like fusion voting, star voting, approval voting, nonpartisan primaries, open primaries. Very smart people, pretty academic, right? Pretty wonky, maybe not necessarily tapping into those deep senses of feeling a need for belonging, lamenting where our nation was headed, what we were leaving to our children. Hard to make that connection. And so I realized that I thought that, I realized my thinking was that we needed a parallel track.
Yep.
Plumbing is critical. We have to have the plumbing, and we have to fix the plumbing. But we have to have a parallel track to create a home for Americans, to tap into that passion. If we have 46% of Americans right now self-identifying as independents, is that
Yeah.
because they are truly completely independently minded and they don't want to belong to anything with any sort of label? Or is it that no one's invited them to a home that is inclusive and makes them feel good, right? Like, What if we built that home for them? What if we built a place that was solutions oriented, that focused on compromise and getting shit done? What a notion. And then those people together would demand for updates in our plumbing systems. Then you start to see real catalytic change, demand for the plumbing systems, implementation of the plumbing systems, and then people who are involved and holding folks accountable. That's how we're going to see change. And I felt that need so desperately, Andrew, the need for a sense of community, broader sense of community amongst Americans. So when I saw what y'all were doing last summer, I thought, huh, I think that's the other piece of the puzzle.
I've always been a mattress guy. It's one reason I'm so thrilled that this podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep is the future of mattresses. You take the Helix Sleep quiz at their website and get your perfect mattress fit in under 2 minutes. It takes a little longer for them to get that to your door, but when they send it to your door, you get a 100-night free trial. I know, it's crazy. That's over 3 months. And then over a 10-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. It's become the go-to mattress for my kids in the house, and they have a few mattresses to choose from, but they just always seem to find this one. You don't need to take my kids' word for it. It's also the #1 mattress pick by Wired, GQ. Imagine that job, just trying out mattresses for magazines, but it's #1. And it's #1 for a reason. Helix is offering up to 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. We are the other piece of the puzzle, and now you're going to be leading the charge. So super excited.
Yeah, I think the press release went out today, so I think now it's official. So no backing out now.
Yeah, well, you've already been a part of the org for the last couple of months, and we'll talk about what your experience has been. But I want to refer back to what you talked about in 2016 when you saw a bunch of folks that you'd seen as being motivated by the right things become pod people or whatnot. Like that, there was an experience for a lot of folks during that point when Trump took over the Republican Party, and you were plugged into a lot of those organizations, and you were like, "No, thank you." But a lot of other people said, "I guess this is what we're doing now." It just went that direction. So, what the heck was that experience like? And did you have to go against the current or the grain? And we've had a couple of people who are part of Forward who left the Republican Party who paid a deep professional cost.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I cannot stress enough how blessed I am to have found this home. First of all, as an American, as a wife, as a mother, personally, really, really, really grateful. But professionally, for those of us who are career politicos, it's, you people have mortgages, people have lives. That's been their career path. And, not unlike any industry that goes belly up, you lose your job. So do you cling to that? Do you kind of cling to the capsized life raft and try and hold on? Um, I didn't want to anymore. Wasn't worth it to me. So I'm really grateful to be here. I will say, I think that I spent a long time in politics, and my colleagues and my friends have remained so. They've been really supportive of me. I received a number of fair warnings. You can't come back, Lindsay. You're going to want to come back. I said, to what? What am I going to go back? What would I come back to?
That's
And
very strong.
let's say that the Forward Party, one of the things that I think that we can accomplish is actually forcing the existing two-party structure to behave better, right? Like if we can force them to behave better, I think that's extraordinary to have a competitive, three competitive parties in the United States. How great for us as Americans and citizens. But what is that, a decade? That would be a decade in the making. And again, it requires a competitive new party to force their hand. Um, so I left. I have zero regrets. I have nothing but gratitude. But as folks who make their career in politics, it's tough.
Yeah, I had Kate on a few months ago, and she
Yeah,
talked about the same thing.
she
She
had
has
to
the
make the
Democratic
same
Party,
choice.
and then they would be like, "It's a one-way street." I mean, like they really try and put the fear in. Though the water is fine on the other side. Though it's fine because of people like you and Kate who are making principled, patriotic decisions that may or may not, be like the best moves to your bank account in like a short term or like et
No, and
cetera,
I
et
gotta
cetera.
tell you, I mean, Andrew, like you have amassed such a wonderfully diverse group of professionals at headquarters right now. It really is. I mean, it is so representative of a variety of different professional backgrounds. Um, you know, uh, Certainly political affiliations. You mentioned Kate. She and I do not see eye to eye on a lot of things, except for the fact that we're committed to a solution and we're committed to
Yeah.
compromise and getting there. And that means that we get to run in the same direction every day, and it's a joy.
Yeah, they're great people, and one thing I do want to note is that Kate Sayer, Matt Shinners, Miles Taylor, Joel Searby, like the folks that people think of as part of Forward Party, Will Conway, they've all been working with you for the last couple of months already,
Hmm.
because you joined as the head of engagement, and
Hmm.
then we had a CEO search going concurrently, and concluded that you were the best fit, in part because we had already seen you in action. What's your experience been like working with the team and meeting with state leads and volunteers and activists around the country?
Yeah, the team again. I mean, Matt Shinners, who has been functioning as the interim CEO, has some sort of like magic power. You all took three legacy organizations and merged not just staff, but staff with different philosophies. They all came to the work for different reasons and different motivations. To a certain extent, I think their solution to fixing the problem was slightly different. And he was able to bring all of those people together, and get folks marching in the same direction, which is just, anyone in corporate America who's led mergers is an extraordinary feat. And I just give Matt like so much credit for that. He's an extraordinary human being. And so I think
And
that
Matt's still here. Matt's not going anywhere, just so people
he's not
know.
going anywhere. Matt's not going anywhere. He's not allowed to. He can take a break, but a short break, not a long break. He knows that. No, I think that you have folks again from varying different professional backgrounds too. So just kind of norms around work and things like that. How I mean, like I'm just like a DC swamp monster, like hardened Politico. So my work style is going to be different than other lovely members of our team who come to
That's a
this
funny
space.
self-characterization, Lindsay.
It's just
That wasn't
simple, right?
in the press release or my description of you.
I know we should.
We
I'll have to
welcome
go
hardened
back.
swamp creature Lindsey Drath.
Hardened swamp creature. No, I mean, first of all, anybody who's ever worked with me knows that I probably cry 3 times a day. I'm so, my heart is so filled with this work and this mission. And I share that with every single person. So regardless of where folks have come, everybody is just so filled with conviction and passion as relates to the work. So that has been an extraordinary finding of mine, and those are amongst the people who are paid. Then we go out into the States where we have hundreds of volunteers. And in my first month, I had the pleasure of actually hitting 5 different markets,
So fun.
meeting the people who are doing this work on the ground as volunteers, and coming at this, just again, people coming to this, having had their light bulb moments for so many different reasons, and coming together and creating real compelling infrastructure. Like this is not everybody's sitting around and like eating bonbons. Like I go into these meetings and folks are at boardrooms, they're putting together bylaws, they have finance plans, they are driving toward, their signature collection campaigns for ballot access. And not a single one of them in the room, from what I've seen, has any sort of political background. And they are doing this, bringing their experiences and talents to the table, and sharing, what people bring in terms of their own kind of individual superpowers to inform the work. And it's just awe-inspiring. It really is. It's very, very cool.
If you know me, you know that I think that our data should be ours, and that big tech right now is running roughshod on our autonomy, our agency, our privacy for sure. One way to help turn the tables on big tech is to use ExpressVPN like I do when I surf the web. It keeps you private by piping you in to another IP address. It's what big companies use. It was rated the number one VPN, that's virtual private network, by CNET, Wired, and more. Let's take it back from big tech. Stop handing over your personal data to the quasi monopolies that mine our activity and sell our info for their profit, not ours. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep me and mine safe online. Visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's expressvpn.com/yang to get 3 extra months free. expressvpn.com/yang to learn more. Yeah, I've had the same experience. One state I visited recently was South Carolina, and I had people introduce
Yeah.
themselves just to get a sense. And
Clint
literally,
Eisenhower shout out.
yeah, Clint Eisenhower's great. 60 to 65% of the people in the room were either military veteran. There was a retired colonel there. It was freaking awesome. But either military veteran, military family, or from some kind of service background. And that really blew me away. Listening to this, where someone would say, like, "Hey, I'm heading to service," like I served for years and years. There's been there have been a number of consistent backgrounds, but that one really hit me hard in South Carolina. In Arizona, it was really equally awesome people. There was like an attorney who just figured all this out and was like, "Thank goodness that now we're doing it." There
Yeah.
was a guy who worked at municipal government for 20 years and just said, he was a civil engineer, and he's like, "I just like to solve problems, and this is the biggest problem I've seen." So the folks who are drawn to the Forward Party in states around the country are just awesome, really, really civic minded patriots. And I will say that everyone's there for the right reasons. There's no one
Oh,
who
for sure.
comes to it for sort of like the bullshit.
There's no room for bullshit. There's no
Yeah,
room for bullshit. I think one of the things that resonates with me, Andrew, when you talk about the engagement of the veterans community, I was on the phone with Todd Connor, who's over at Veterans for Political Innovation, just a great group,
great group.
and we shared something that we have in common, which is the get shit done mentality. For veterans looking at this space, it's like, no, we just have to create a plan and get after it. Like, let's just get this done. We're going to
This
create a
action
plan. We're going to go
oriented. They're like,
after it.
okay,
And
what's the
they're
mission?
totally
Let's go do
action
it.
oriented,
Yeah, I love that
totally
too.
action oriented, which I love. So they're extraordinary partners for all of us in the space.
Yeah, so to retrace your steps a little bit, you showed up to DC as a college student,
I
and
did.
yeah, and then you got involved on Capitol Hill um, uh, in different capacities. Were you someone who showed up to DC thinking, "Hey, I'm going to get into politics and make
Nope.
the world a better place"? Like, what was the original thinking?
Yes to the former, no. I mean, yes to the latter, no to the former. I had a really cool opportunity actually my senior year of high school. I got to live abroad and definitely shifted my perspective, more globally. And then I had an opportunity to do some really cool travel when I was in college. Actually, it was a blessing, but a unfortunate circumstance that I was there. I actually went and was deployed as part of an earthquake relief team in 1999 when earthquakes hit Turkey. So watching the news right now is
Terrible.
just is crushing. Having been on the ground then 25 years ago and watching what those people went through. So I definitely had more of kind of a global perspective. And then I went from global to hyper local when I came home one summer. I had mono. I was not supposed to be in Connecticut that summer. I got mono and I got a job working for the town clerk. And I went to town hall every day and I worked for the town clerk and I registered dogs. And then when folks came in and needed printouts of their plots of their property lines. I had this giant copy machine, and I would roll the whole thing through. And the town clerk in Connecticut was a woman named Claudia Weber, and Claudia changed my life. She cared. She cared about her community. She knew everybody in town. She loved being the town clerk. She'd gone to GW and had great stories of all sorts of wild things that she had done in Washington and all sorts of like crazy aspirational roles she could have had. And she came home and she worked as the town clerk in Connecticut. And Claudia put a couple phone calls in for me and got me an internship working for a guy named Chris Shays, who was a representative of Connecticut 4, extraordinarily thoughtful bipartisan leader in the House of Representatives, which is why he lost um, re-election. But really, really good guy. And I got an internship on Capitol Hill, and it was just magic. Like interns back then, and this was before 9/11, so I don't know if it exists anymore, but we had a pass to the Library of Congress. So like where other kids went to school and researched their papers on campus at the library, which we had a great library. Like I went to the Library of Congress and I had the librarians help me research and pull stuff. It was just a magical key to something remarkable. Um, so that was, yeah, those were Claudia Weber at the town clerk. I registered dogs. That was my first job in politics.
Wow. And then you climbed the ranks in Capitol Hill in various ways, worked for our friend Michael Steele
I did.
when he had this kind of this internal revolution over at the RNC.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started and ran your own business for years and years,
Yeah.
very successfully, which I think is such a feat as someone who's started and run a couple of organizations. Like anyone who actually has done that successfully, like the buck stops at you. There's like no place else for it to go.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my business partner and I were well aware of that. The months where you write your own business a check to cover payroll, you're like, okay,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
know
There's no
it.
place to go. No one to
No
blame. You
place to
sit
go.
there and yeah, you feel like the head of an extended family, and you're the actual head of like a real family. You're the parent of three, I want to say.
Yeah, I've got three. We have our big girl is 12, and we have 8-year-old twins. They'll be 9 next month.
Wow, twins. Expecting?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when you got that news.
No. Oh my God. Andrew, I'll tell you. So we had just launched our company. We were we were about a year in, not quite a year in, and things were starting to cook, and we were super stoked. We were starting to sign big clients, and really one of my big anchor clients was Speaker Boehner. So I was his National Finance Committee consultant and
Wow.
worked to build out a National Finance Committee for the Speaker, which was so much fun because it was actually him coming in and working with delegations in the states, bringing together House members, Republican House members in various states uh, to raise money. So it was really fun because I got to know a lot of the members really well. And I found out I was pregnant with the twins, and I had like 3 or 4 fundraisers flanking my delivery date. And one of them required me to go up to New York, and I had a big meeting at KKR. It's Ken Mellman, General Petraeus, and all these like very important Speaker of the House. And I am 7.5 months pregnant with twins, and one of 2 women in that boardroom. And I kind of waddled in. Everyone went, "Oh God, don't mess with her." So yeah, it was not, they were not expected, and I was not, there was no way I was going to relinquish my work on that particular project. So
So you've been plugged into a bunch of folks who were senior in the Republican Party. 2016, you think, okay, guys, this is not the way, and then a bunch of them sure are going to be like, I guess this is the way. Though I'm sure a few of them surreptitiously said to you, like, oh, I don't like what's going on. Where do you think that group is now? Because I'm sure you talk to people of different
yeah,
backgrounds, and you've been talking to them about structural reform for the last several years.
yeah.
Yeah, like, because one of the things that you'd said to me at some point was like, look, I'm not sure if people were ready, 4 or 5 years ago, but they're increasingly ready now.
I stand by that. In fact, I met with some of our wonderful legacy leaders from SAM. I sat down with them in the spring of 2017, and I said, "Look, I'm nervous. We're all nervous. We don't know what we're in for here." But I think that the predominant positioning amongst center right Republicans is going to be to wait and see. Let's not upset the apple cart. We still have Mitch McConnell, who we can trust. We have Paul Ryan, who we can trust. So let's not upset the apple cart. Let's keep going. And I don't think that folks are ready at that time. I do think this is different. I think it's much different right now. And it's just not getting better, right? It's just getting
No, I
worse.
can't say it is really, right.
It's just not getting better. And I'm an optimist, but I'm also a pragmatist. And, there's a colleague of ours in the space who she and I were on a panel together last summer. And she kept saying that, by talking about fixing the system, the notion of fixing the system and introducing a new party, we're somehow undermining the system as a whole, and that instead what we need to be doing is reinforcing confidence in the system and building out moderate factions within the two parties. And I just said, too late. It's too late.
People have been trying to do that for years, and now they're throwing in the towel. I mean, I've had a lot of those conversations. Heck, the entire Renew America movement crew was like, we're going to restore the Republican Party, and then they joined the merger because they said, you know what, like the Republican Party is lost.
Yeah. I don't think that it's an option anymore, Andrew. I think it's just way too far gone.
People have figured out that they can vent like their negative impulses and control the party in a particular way. And it's very hard to put that genie back in the bottle, like they've learned that lesson.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing too, I think for folks who have visions of building out moderate factions within the existing party structures, have never been to a state central committee meeting. They have never been at a platform committee meeting. These aren't center right, center left leaders. The leadership of the party structures are the extremes themselves, and they are going to continue to drive party regulations and party rulings in a way that incentivizes extremism. So, I think that folks who think of themselves as, a center left, Democrat or center right Republican, would be shocked to hear some of the rhetoric that is coming out of rulemaking committees in the current two-party system. They are not representative of the broad base of Americans and where we want to go. They're incredibly divisive, and not and the bomb throwing and the name calling of quote the other, right?
Yeah.
That whole
There's a
notion of the other,
dehumanization of this process
total
right now.
dehumanization. Yeah, I have no I have no place there.
And it is fun how people have come to Forward from different angles, where like Matt and Kate, are former Dems. I don't know if Matt was ever a Dem. Matt's been third party for a long time, but
he's Andrew. He and I have had enough policy conversations to know that I know where he falls on a lot of things. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, but at this point, we're getting pitted against each other in this like increasingly destructive and futile manufactured conflict. And so whatever goals we might have for our country, like we have to say, like, look, like this current system is not going to serve them. Like we have to upgrade and modernize the system. So you've been working at Forward for a couple months. And by the way, you did a bunch of things that I thought were awesome leadership, where you organized a retreat, brought everyone together, got everyone on the same page. You did a bunch of things where I was like, oh, like that's some aces leadership. It's the kind of thing that I would have.
I just wanted to go to John Kingston's farm. I just wanted to see snow-capped mountains in Vermont. No, it was so important. Like culture. I know this is everyone said, but like culture eats strategy for breakfast. Like it does all day long. I mean, we can have the greatest strategic vision for party building, and if culturally we're all not synced and there isn't, a foundation of trust amongst our team, we'll never get there.
Which leads me to possibly the most fun thing is like, what lies ahead? What can we look forward to with the Forward Party with Lindsey at its helm?
Oh my gosh, we're gonna be in everyone's backyards, Andrew. We're so excited. Kate Sayer has envisioned a Forward Together tour, and it has kind of three components. One is going into a community and really sitting down with community leaders, understanding what their needs are, understanding where those needs aren't being met by the two-party system, how they're being left behind. We are looking for folks to participate in those conversations, people who are leaders of all sorts of different communities in various cities around the country. So we just started that process in Arizona. We're going to be out in California actually this week. I talked to the team in North Carolina over the weekend. We're going to be in North Carolina doing it. So that's kind of the first component. The second component is a big, large scale event. We want folks to know we're here. We want to make a splash. So we're going to make some noise. We're going to have some fun. We're going to recruit volunteers. We're going to raise a lot of money. And then one of the things that's, I think, really central to a lot of the folks who are drawn to this work is the notion of service. So how do we ensure that communities understand that we're there to serve them? This isn't a grift. We're not trying to force something down people's throats. And to that end, if we're there, how can we serve the community? So the other component of our presence in these markets is partnering with local charities in service projects so that Ford volunteers can be out in the communities and helping to serve those who need it.
That's a very wholesome, beautiful vision. There's talk of a convention this summer, which might just include some of the state leaders and activists. People
Yeah.
ask me about it periodically. Do you know where it's going to be?
Yeah, so we are, so yes, the notion of having a presence in people's communities and backyards and working hand in hand in service projects is wonderful. We also need to win. We have to go out there and win. And that's where the hardened political swamp monster comes. So we're going to get all of our state leads together. We are in the process of signing a contract, so I'm not going to say where, but it is
What?
centrally located. We are in a regionally
Central,
centrally
eh?
located place that's going to be easy for everybody to get to, close to an international airport. We're going to be there June 22nd through the 25th. And it's going to be an opportunity for all of our states leads to come together and really talk about what it's going to take to win. How are we going to build these parties? How are we going to create durable, lasting infrastructures? How are we going to initiate these signature collection campaigns? How are we going to recruit candidates? How are we going to run them? How are we going to raise money? How are we going to talk about it and get the media to tell stories about it? So we're going to be doing all of that, and then also again, more team building, more kind of imparting the culture and the values and the principles of the Ford Party uh, onto our teams. Little Kool-Aid drinking. Little Kool-Aid drinking's great. We're going to do that, and so we're really excited about that. So June 22nd through the 25th in a regionally central location to be announced.
Yeah, no, more to come. Stay tuned. And certainly I'm going to block those dates out. So we had a national search for the CEO. We had founders and CEOs of organizations throw their hats in the ring. And it was really lovely in the sense that there are a lot of people that recognize the need for what we're building. But I have to say, Lindsey, the team just was so blown away by you and your leadership and dedication from day one that we're so pumped to have you as the new CEO. You're going to lead forward in a tremendous growth path for the next number of years. I'm pumped to work alongside you, do everything I can to help. But thank you for your courage, really. I mean, that
Thank you.
you were a very, very experienced Politico. There are dozens of ways that you could have gone that did not involve trying to solve this set of fundamental problems for the country. But you're here because this is what the country needs. So really, on behalf of everyone who loves Forward, thank you. And
Thank you.
I'm so excited to work with you.
Thank you. It is, it sounds trite and easy. It's just the right thing,
Yeah,
right? It's
it
the
is.
right thing to do. It's the right place to be. In any movement in the history of our nation, there are the misfits and the outliers that start the process, and that's a little bit of where we are right now. But I believe in it. I truly, truly believe in it. It's the right thing to do. And I'm really, really grateful to be here and for all the folks that are on the journey with us because it's an awesome group of people.
It is an awesome group, growing every day. You know, one of the things, Lindsay, I sometimes ask people, it's like, hey, do you think the solution is going to come from within the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or other? And then they think about it for a second, and they're like, definitely other. And I'm like, see, like you know.
Yeah, do you know what I didn't realize, and I guess I slept on it, that David Rubenstein has a series that he does a peer-to-peer show. Have you ever
Yeah.
seen his show?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. He was on the podcast, last year.
I turned on Sunday. He had Lorraine Powell Jobs on,
Yeah, she's great.
and it was she's so great, and it was funny because talking to her, as an innovator and an entrepreneur, married to a disruptor. She is a disruptor, and David Rubenstein kind of held up his cell phone to her and said, "Did you know? Like, did your husband know? Did Steve know that this was going to be the greatest, most transformational consumer product ever?" And she said, "No. He always kind of liked to think about himself as kind of the David against the Goliath and a little scrappy." And I thought, hey, we can be the iPhone. We can be the iPhone of political parties. Why not?
I'll take it. Maybe we could work with that, Lindsay. Forward the iPhone of political parties. Sorry for you non-Apple users out there.
Fits on including our interim CEO, Matt Shinners, but it fits on a bumper sticker, right?
It's all to the good, and gosh knows that the country needs it, and that neither of the two parties resembles it at all.
No, they don't. They don't. More choice.
Yes, as I say, the backward party was taken maybe twice. All right, Lindsay, such a pleasure,
Thank
and
you, Andrew.
can't wait to get out on the trail with you in the days to come.
I will see you in California.
I'll see you in California.